Hello, it is another Tuesday, which of course means it's time for another in real life video. And as per usual, we are doing another general viewer submitted topic or ranking, and this time it is a ranking. We don't always do it, but we do frequently do it. So if you have any questions or, I don't know, requests for us to rank something silly, feel free to do so in the comments below, and it helps a whole bunch if you include a question mark somewhere in the comment, because when I go to add it to my list, it helps me Control F through stuff, you know. It's that simple. I just do a Control F question mark through all the comments every so often. Anyway, without further ado, this week's ranking request comes from an individual whose username should be somewhere in the lower third of your screen right about now, and they ask, very straightforward and to the point, ranking of each Morrowind skill? Question mark? And you know what? Yeah, we can do that. That would be fun. Almost a bit of a throwback to some of the, I don't know, the start of this YouTube channel when I did a big slew of honestly somewhat incomplete Morrowind mechanics video guides. Which still to this day, although other folks have come along and made like higher production value video guides and stuff at this point, they still garner a decent chunk of viewership, surprisingly to me. But hey, you know, such is the nature of things. Anyway, without further ado, we'll do a quick cut here, and I'll see you after that cut. All right, welcome back. We are in picture-in-picture mode with our tier maker, silly, stupid little list situation set up for us ready to go. As per usual, you know, you can always skip ahead if you want to just see the results. But hey, then you miss out on all the weird, stupid banter in the middle, which, at least to me, that's the real fun part, is the banter about this. Also, of course, if this is the first one of these little tier lists, rankings that you've ever seen that I've done, we've actually done several of them, and there's now a huge playlist of them all contained. It's been oft requested and often also thought about on my end of things, thinking like, oh yeah, I probably should put them all together because they definitely seem to have some measure of popularity. Anyway, they're all now neatly arranged for your viewing and listening pleasure. But as per usual, all of the images here, although these are the skill icons as they appear in Morrowind, these are icons taken just from uesp.net. My favorite Elder Scrolls wiki of choice. I saw recently that I suppose it's true, that uesp.net, the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages.net, the wiki we all know and love, it actually predates Wikipedia itself. Amazing. Anyway, let us begin with, do we want to go in alphabetical order, or do we want to go in like alphabetical and like specialization? Is that what it's referred to as? Specialization order, where it's combat, magic, stealth, or combat, stealth, magic, I guess is the actual order. Let's do that. That feels more right to me. Okay. Let's start things off with Armorer, then. Regular old Armorer. For a lot of these of course will be heavily tinged, so maybe more so soaked in personal and subjective opinion. Don't take this as like a tier list of, oh, these are the skills I should major or minor in, or keep as miscellaneous when you're building your Morrowind character. Don't go by this as like, oh, I'm just going to make a character that has all S-rank skills. That's not the idea here. Don't do that. Because, you know, you should keep things balanced out. You should have like one way of dealing damage. You should have some utility in there, probably something for like defense, whether it be a type of armor or unarmored. You know, there's a good balance of things you want to do. So don't just see this and take only S-rank skills. That would be very bad advice. This is not that type of list. We're not just power ranking them. And even in the situation where if you were power ranking them, you would end up in a situation where like you're picking multiple damage dealing skills and you just don't really need that. Right? Anyway, Armorer. That would probably go in a more traditional tier list. That probably would be an S ranker. Armor it lets you fix up your equipment. They give us poison. They make us eat their poison so that we can buy their cure. Think about it that way. They give us condition on our weapons and armor, and they say, here, as a treat, you get to buy repair prongs. You get to buy repair hammers. Wow, I love that. And early on, it kind of sucks because you're kind of stuck taking journeyman's, the basic brown-headed hammers with the shitty wooden haft to them, or sometimes repair prongs, but oftentimes it's definitely going to be those heavy-ass hammers, and you tend to get like them in a stack of 10 or so from your local fighters guild. You sign up and join up, and you just take them out of the equipment chest. It sucks. They're really heavy, and you end up failing it quite a few times. It's a good one to have, though. Like, it's kind of a necessity if you're planning on wearing armor, because there's no reason why you wouldn't devote, like, a little bit of your encumbrance to, like, 2 to 3 at least repair hammers or prongs or anything. There's no reason to not do it just in case. Because the last thing you want to do is head out without a hammer, at least one hammer in your inventory, and then you get absolutely fucked. And then you're having to do like on-site procurements for your equipment, like just picking up random weapons that you may not even be skilled at. This is sort of like the death snowball for the beginning of the game. If you're bad at it, if you're inexperienced with Morrowind, you can kind of snowball and spiral in a sense. But armor, I don't know. It does what it does. It's not exciting. It's not really thrilling. It fails a lot early on. It's one of the few skills where there's really never a big major need to invest in training unless for whatever reason you just want to do it really early on. There's just no reason to really give a shit. It just kind of happens. It's a byproduct of playing the dang game. Even if you're a caster, there's a chance that you're going to have some sort of enchanted equipment, or at the very least, a staff that will occasionally take some damage and you'll need to repair it up. It's just something that naturally comes. It's very similar to athletics and acrobatics, I feel. And for that, I'm giving it a B for boring. It's boring. Boring skill. Right? I'm on record, I believe, as recent as the Oblivion Remastered playthrough, saying that although I appreciate some of the tactical decisions, especially early on, when it comes to like, oh, I have to dedicate some of my inventory to carrying around hammers, you know, there's definitely some measure of strategy in like, okay, what's the cost versus risk of filling up more of my inventory with more supplies? What's the cost versus risk of doing that versus having more room for goodies when you go out into the world? That's kind of enjoyable, but I think that very rapidly wears off as soon as you exit the early game struggle, you know, and then after that, it just becomes tedium. It pales in comparison to being able to like upgrade or imagine being able to modify parts of your armor and stuff in some interesting way, put like a unique stat on it almost in the same way you can in Fallout 4 or 76. Imagine that. That would be pretty interesting. That would be pretty cool. But here, it's very straightforward. It works. It just works. Anyway. Up next, based on what I just said, another skill, athletics, that is seemingly very boring. Athletics, it's got a picture of a fun little dude running around. I always imagine these being like little, I don't know, this one makes me think of like Vivek running, right? Specifically, when we're talking about Vivek as like an egg, it makes me think of them, right? Nonetheless, it's a little figure running around. Athletics, like I said, seemingly boring. It's something that you're just going to level up naturally throughout playing unless you're a complete weirdo and you're doing some sort of strange challenge run to never level up athletics, which I forget, do you level up athletics too if you're levitating? I think you do as well, right? I don't know that there is a way to play the game without leveling athletics, because even if you jump and then move mid-air, I think you're still going to level athletics so long as you're making some sort of movement on a horizontal plane, right? I think it's impossible to not level it. Either way, it seems boring. It sounds boring. But in truth, it's kind of fun. In truth, athletics is a bit more fun than armor. And that is because it can be fortified, and it gets really fun and interesting if you fortify your athletics, or as most people tend to do, fortify your speed. But if you fortify your athletics, you go a bit faster. And if you keep doing it, you can go really fast. And that makes it super duper fun. The idea of fortifying it past the norm of 100 with a little bit of restoration magic in some way. Super cool. Mind you, like I said, most people tend to just go with speed. Most people just tend to go with speed. But it makes it, I think, a rung above armor, which is a little boring, right? Okay, up next is Axe, the first of our damage dealing related skills. This applies to, in Morrowind, not just, well, it applies to two and one-handed axes, right? So your hand axes, your big battle axes and stuff. Unfortunately, when it comes to axes, there are not that many cool axes in the game with unique enchants. There's like the Cleaver of St. Felms off the top of my head that exists in the game. But even that has like kind of a boring on-hit enchant, or maybe it's not even on-hit. There's just no cool axes. There are 0 cool axes in Morrowind, at least that come to mind. The bonus, the good thing that axes tend to have going for them, though, is that relative to equivalent weapons in other skills, so if you're comparing an axe to like a blunt weapon, and they're both made of the same material, or a long blade, or certainly a short blade, axes tend to be a bit slower, right? They have lesser but comparable encumbrance weight to a blunt weapon. However, they do actually have higher damage. Now, because there's no perk system in Morrowind, the sort of trade-off that you get, the reason why you would want to use an axe, is because although the minimum damage is typically like 1 or 2, it's really bad for firing off an axe really fast. The maximum damage, so if you like charge up your attack, you hold down your attack button until the animation locks in and you stop animating, that damage is the highest in the game. The only problem is that doesn't really matter, right? Right? When you get to numbers where it becomes a bit of a factor, we're talking like Daedric battle axes and stuff. At that point in the game, it doesn't really matter. I think axes kind of suck, right? Don't let me dissuade you from going an aesthetic route, which you should definitely do in Morrowind, because the combat, once you understand how it functions, it's super easy. It's like shockingly easy to get through the game on maximum difficulty, even once you know how to build a character and play and all of that. I think axes kind of suck. I don't think they're actively like complete garbo, but I do think that axes, I think they're C rank, right? There's no cool, interesting axe. The one benefit that they have going for them, which is higher peak, higher maximum damage, it's practically negligible early on, right? It kind of sucks early on, and there's only like a noticeable difference in the late game, or mid game if you get lucky and find stuff where you know where to look. But it's irrelevant because you can just buff up your strength and hit with like a short sword for the same amount of damage. You know, you could theoretically do that. I mean, I think maybe there's something to be said for like doing a stealth crit attack, but a sneak attack in and of itself kind of sucks. But that's not at the feet of Axe. That's at the feet of Sneak being kind of bad. Not to get too far ahead on our tier list here, but Axe, it's a C ranker. Now, here's one that's very reliable and very fun. Block. Block, I don't want to conflate the skill of block with the idea of just having a shield equipped, because everyone can and probably should have a shield equipped in Morrowind, because it's just another stat stick. Even if you're using a two-handed weapon, you can still have a shield equipped and give you some sort of bonus if you don't mind the additional encumbrance, right? Maybe if you're a caster, you do mind the additional encumbrance, but at a certain point, maybe you got some strength on you, you've leveled up your strength, you don't mind so much. But just looking at the idea of blocking in Morrowind, it's so powerful because it is automated. Blocking requires zero input from the player other than you should face the enemy, right? Face the incoming attack and you will roll a chance to block the attack. You could be in the middle of a melee attack and you would still block it, right? And the best part of blocking in Morrowind is that it completely negates all incoming damage. If you block, you don't take anything. The problem, though, is that it starts to drain the condition of your shield on a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have a really rinky-dink shield and you're blocking attacks from like a two-handed Terry coming down on you with a double-fisted battle hammer, right? A war hammer, if you will, your shield's probably going to just last 1 or 2 blows, you know? Similarly, if you're out there slamming and jamming, you are the two-handed Terry, you're going to rip through shields like nobody's business. It has happened to me. It will be a shock to you. You will say like, oh my God, did they have a low condition shield to start with? No, you're just dealing that much damage. You have just wiped out that much HP in a single blow that you wiped out their entire shield with 1 or 2 hits. It's really wild. It's really fun. I like the way in which it's sort of blocking acts in conversation with high damage dealing weapons versus low damage dealing weapons that attack faster, you know, wherein a short blade, if you're just spamming your fastest attack as fast as possible, you're not winding it back at all, which is a very valid tactic for a short blade attack or hand to hand. You're going to be blocking like nobody's business or getting blocked, and it's going to do usually some minimal amounts of damage, unless your weapon is enchanted, in which case you get the enchanted damage bleeding through, which is a fun workaround if you're using short blades. It makes it kind of have a different approach, and it kind of sucks more if you're using a one-handed weapon, particularly one that has low minimum damage, and or you're just going with minimum damage, right? Just at that. And you're not really relying on strength or whatever. But it does make combat feel very different. If you are walking around with, like, say, a two-handed axe and you're constantly winding it up 100% of the way and landing your blows, you're going to notice, oh, shoot, their shield is just getting wiped out by me, or my shield is getting wiped out by them. It's very fun. I like it a lot. I would say it's an A ranker. Blocking, I think, is very fun and frankly very powerful because you don't have to do anything. You just need to look at them. It does make it difficult to level very early on if you don't put anything into it or if you don't train it, because then your chance to block is going to be super duper low. So you run into an issue where, like, yeah, you don't need to block that many times to level up, but you're rarely ever going to block, right? But hey, there's Lord knows there's a block trainer in Fort Moonmoth or Buckmoth, which one is out by Aldrun, that has some pretty good block training that you can buy. Anyway, block, it's an A ranker. Anyway, we come over to blunt weapon, which, like we had said, when it comes to damage and speed, blunt weapons, which would be like your hammers and all of that, or clubs even, or staves as well, but you probably shouldn't actually be using them on unenchanted. It occupies sort of a middle ground when it comes to damage and speed. It occupies a middle ground where the DPS, the damage on hit doesn't get as high as axes. The speed, not as fast as a long blade. The benefit of blunt weapon, though, is that it is pretty heavy, right? Thus, you're more likely to, like, cause your opponent to flinch. But the issue is that they're so heavy. They are so heavy. Now, in saying that, if that were just the case, if we were just looking at base weapons, I would probably say blunt weapon might be C rank. Likely a B rank. Well, likely C rank. Yeah, likely C rank. But you know what? I'll bump it up to B. Right? I think we get locked into B rank firmly because there is a very, very good blunt weapon in the game. Right? One of the best weapons in the entire game, I would argue, is a one-handed blunt weapon, which means you also get blocking, right? And you get it as part of the main quest. That's right, folks. We're talking about none other than Sunder. It is just amazing. The stats on Sunder are ridiculously good. It truly is a fantastic weapon. Sunder is so good that it helps eke out blunt weapon from a C ranker into B rank, right? It accentuates the positives, as you will. There we go. Blunt weapon, B for blunt. All right. Up next, we have heavy armor. What can be said about the different armor other than who really cares, right? Right. I think when it comes to armor in Morrowind, I guess you could say, well, I think it would be a different tier list if we were ranking the aesthetics of the armor. So I don't want to be too much like thinking on, okay, heavy armor looks cool because the only heavy armor, dwarven armor in this game can only be heavy, right? There's no sort of distinction of it being like, okay, there's lightweight ebony armor this time around, as there actually is in, well, not Morrowind, but or not Morrowind, not Skyrim. Is there? Is there lightweight ebony armor? I don't think so. But there's lightweight versions of other tiers of equipment. Like, for instance, we were just talking about stuff like Stalrim. Thanks to Anniversary Edition, Skyrim Anniversary Edition introduces light and heavyweight versions of lower tiers of armor, I believe. There's like the Dragonbone is a good one. There's Dragonbone versus Dragon Scale. Doesn't really exist here in Morrowind, right? And I think the instances, does it actually exist at all? No, I think it being heavy, light, or medium is entirely dictated by the material itself, right? I think so. The benefit of heavy armor is that it's very plentiful. It's all over the place early game. So if you do want heavy armor and you've got the strength and encumbrance to carry it around, you're going to be doing great, you know? You almost never have to worry about repairing it at endgame because it has just a ludicrous amount of condition compared to medium and light especially. It's plentiful. Even the higher ranking stuff, right? It's simple enough to get a full set of ebony armor. You know, maybe it's a little tougher to get a full set of Daedric armor, but it's remarkably easy to get a full set of ebony, which will do you pretty good, but it is very heavy. And Lord knows early on, if you're just roaming around Seyda Neen, you're bound to run into some rinky-dink heavy armor, some basic starter heavy armor here and there. I think it's fine. It's useful, right? It's good. The main benefit of it, however, lies in enchanting, right? You might think that it would be balanced around to where like clothing, unarmored stuff would be better for enchanting, but you would be fucking wrong. Its heavy armor tends to be able to take the most powerful enchants, the best constant effect enchants end up being on heavy armor 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10. It's just the way to go if you want to be someone who uses high-powered constant effect stuff. For instance, the Daedric Tower Shield, best shield in the game if you want to put an enchant on something, and in fact, one of the best items in the game, if not the best item in the game, for having a heavy-duty constant effect enchant. It can hold a lot of enchantment on it. And in that sense, I think maybe we maybe need to bump it up to A rank because it's just built different. It's just better than the rest because of that enchanting factor. As we go into like light or medium armor, the difference in enchanting, I feel, becomes negligible, right? At that point, you're really going in for just fashion, you know, which you should do. You should do. At the end of the day, you don't even really need to worry about enchants whatsoever in Morrowind, especially if it's not your first time playing. It is so irrelevant. The game is so easy. Don't even worry about it. Anyway, speaking of making things easy, how about Longblade? Longblade is maybe the best weapon to pick as a major skill if we're going that way. It might be the best purely off of the idea of it being decently balanced. They attack pretty quick. They don't weigh too much. You're not going to be encumbered a whole bunch if you're lower on strength. But crucially, it's one of those skills that you can start the game out with having very high. I think it's red guards. Hang on, let me double check here. Let me double check. Red guards get a whopping 10-point bonus, right? Yeah, it's ridiculous. So if you're fearful of in Morrowind having like a low hit chance, you should probably go with a red guard who specializes in Longblade, because holy hell, you're gonna rip stuff up, right? I think the only comparable situation would be if you went with Orc and you just used their racial power Berserk, because that gives you like roughly a 100% chance to hit for 1 minute, which is very strong, but it's only it's only once a day, right? So it's up to you what you prefer. And also it's worth bearing in mind that red guards have also a top tier inherent racial power, right? Their own adrenaline rush is really strong as well, right? It is really powerful. But it's also worth pointing out that not only are red guards good at Longblade, well, a bunch of other folks are too, right? If you're going to roll up as an Imperial or a Dark Elf or a Nord, which I would say that right there covers some of the most popular characters in the game, right? Right. Most people are probably either going to play one of those. There's a chance that you roll up as a Khajiit or an Argonian, but I think Khajiit and Argonian characters, if you're going your first time through, I think you tend to get a little scared away from them because of the fact that you can't equip certain hats and you can't equip any shoes, any boots, right? That's a little scary, but once you're a little seasoned, you realize that doesn't matter so much, but it does mean that you lose out on the boots of blinding speed, right? Which are so nice to have. Nonetheless, long blade, it's just solid. There's long blades everywhere. If you fuck up and you break your weapon, or it's so low condition that it's hardly dealing any damage, chances are you can just like look under a damn rock and find a long blade for you to just like use for a bit. A lot of the cool weapons that you're going to find and run into are going to end up being some type of long blade, whether it be two-handed or one-handed. Early on, there's a decent chance in the early and certainly in the mid game that you're going to find a jink blade, a jink sword, which is extremely powerful. There are these swords that that apply paralysis on hit. Very useful to just like swap between them. Apply some paralysis, quickly equip a different weapon, wail on the enemy while they're paralyzed, and just have a good, easy ass time. Longblade, made good by virtue of the fact that they're just plentiful. They're just everywhere, right? They're just a fun, solid situation to go with. I think they're A rank. You know, I think they're very solid. All right, next up we come to medium armor. An armor type which exists not in the future. There is no medium armor in Oblivion nor in Skyrim. But man, if the medium armor in Morrowind doesn't look cool. I love the bone mold stuff. This is where a lot of my own personal taste is going to come in, because so much medium armor I love the look of. I love the look of like harder plating with a little bit of like cloth thrown in. That's one of my favorite ways in which armor gets designed, have like a hard material with a very soft, like flowy, drapey sort of material combined over it or under it. I love that. I think it looks fantastic. And I think as games only start to look better and we're able to apply more and more physics to our character models and all that, it's just going to keep looking better and better. And because of that, also like some of the most iconic, the bone mold armor, arguably the most iconic armor in the game. And if not, go with the Ordinator armor, the Indoril stuff. All of that is medium, right? I think you got to give it up for looking iconic as hell. Medium armor, right? Otherwise, if we're not thinking of the fact that aesthetically there's so many cool ones, which granted, mind you, we just said aesthetically for heavy armor, we shouldn't take aesthetics too deeply into account. Guess again, for medium armor, I lied. We're actually going to take it heavily into account. And thus, medium armor is tied for its heavy. Right. All right. Up next is our final of the... Oh, I need to be moving these over to the left because they're starting to... I'm covering them with my camera. But our final... What would you call it? Combat specialization skill. That being spear. Similar to medium armor, this is a skill which does not exist in future games. Spears, there's some fun spears as well here. Not too many though, especially compared to long blades. But you know, you get like the Spear of Bitter Mercy, right? The benefit of spear that does actually make them really powerful. They're a bit rare. They're hard to come upon. I think you tend to run into like bandits and stuff, right? That will have spears if you need to pick one up. But the benefit of spear, which I have become very, very familiar with on Morrowind Mondays Volume 2, is the fact that they have such an enhanced reach, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have double the reach of a long blade, of a one-handed long blade. Oh, even a two-handed long blade only has 1.0 reach. Whereas, let me double check here. Spears. Yeah, all spears have baseline a 1.8 reach, which is absurd. If you're in a melee fight and you have enough speed, you can very easily melee kite using spears. It is so simple to kite an enemy in melee with spears. It's amazingly powerful. They will simply never hit you if you are fast enough. Not because they will miss you because you have like high sanctuary or agility or whatever, or you've sapped their own outgoing attacks. They will miss you because you're just too far away from them. You're too fast. If you're able to backpedal quickly enough, you don't have to worry about anything. Shoot, you could probably levitate over most enemies and just poke them. The only problem occurs that the fact that not every enemy is going to be melee strictly. There are a lot of melee enemies, mind you. There are a whole lot of them. But every so often, you run into a person who has a bow and arrow, who's got throwing stars, or is casting magic at you. But man, spears are pretty powerful. There aren't that many cool spears, it's got to be said. Let me double check here. Are there many cool spears? There are a fair number of spears, but not many cool ones, no. Yeah, even so, spears are super good. Right? I think they're very good. I got to give them A rank. They're solid. They're strong. They're powerful. All right. Up next, we're warping into the stealth category, the stealth specialization, right? If you choose it as your specialization in character creation, stealth, you'll get a nice little bonus in all these skills. Same as with the others. It's not just stealth. Anyway, first up is acrobatics. An effect which, very similar to athletics, you're going to just level it up as you go, and very similar to athletics, you can fortify it over 100. Mind you, it's not as good to fortify acrobatics as it is to just get jump, right? If you have like a hop toad spell, something like that you got off of like a hop toad ring, or you're just, you're cooking up spells, you're doing spell making yourself, or you're doing custom enchants, jump is way more efficacious than acrobatics on a point per point basis. But make no mistake, acrobatics is fun. And for that reason, I guess I'll make it, it's a similar rank as athletics. No, I think they rank roughly similarly. If we were talking acrobatics, if we included jump, then sure, I would amp it up there. But let's be real, jump is an alteration spell. Anyway, hand to hand. Hand to hand is the most peculiar melee, arguably, in that it's the only melee form of dealing damage. In fact, it's one of two ways of dealing damage. There's only two ways in which you can deal fatigue damage, and hand-to-hand is one of them. The difficult part, or the peculiar thing with hand-to-hand, it's very cool to do punching on ridiculous-looking enemies. If you're fighting like different types of Daedra, just beating them up is really funny and cool, and they make they have like combat barks and cries as you're knocking the shit out of them. That's very funny. And then they get KO'd and they're laying on the ground. The issue is that, especially if you're not fortifying your hand to hand, combat takes like twice as long, right? It is going to take you so much longer to kill enemies. Now, on the flip side, damage you deal with hand to hand scales in a weird way. Unlike every other type of martial attack, including marksman, those all scale their damage upwards with strength. The skill level itself only contributes chance to hit. However, with hand-to-hand, your skill level both increases your chance to hit and the amount of fatigue/health damage you do per punch, which does, admittedly, it does make hand-to-hand a bit more of a valuable prospect, because you're sort of doubling down. You're getting like a double dip when it comes to, you get extra value out of punching. You never have to repair them. So if you want to keep cranking up, if you really wanted to, you could custom enchant all of your gear to just be hand-to-hand and knock down every single person in one punch and then kill them in a second punch. because I don't think you can do it in one single punch. Correct me if I'm wrong. No matter how high your hand-to-hand is, the first punch goes through the fatigue gauge and knocks them out. And while they're in the KO'd animation, then the next punch deals actual health damage, right? So you can't actually you can't one punch your enemies and all of that, unless you're just seeking to knock them out. The other cool part of hand-to-hand is the fact that there are a few instances where you don't actually want to kill an enemy. You just want to knock them out. And once you do so, or you lower their health, they'll speak to you. And there's instances where there's a few quests where enemies will just try to fist fight you. And you could kill them, I guess. But things play out a little bit differently if you hand-to-hand them back, or you sap their fatigue, stuff like that with magic. It's a peculiar one. I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it's just a really peculiar way of dealing damage and fighting. And because of that, I think I'm going to give it a B rank. I don't think it's like amazing, but it's very peculiar. The only thing that I worry about is like if you decide to go hand to hand and you're not using, like case in point, I did this recently in Morrowind Mondays Volume 2. There was a point where I was just leveling up hand to hand. If you decide to go the route of hand to hand and you don't fortify your hand to hand through anything else, the damage is good. It's going to take you forever to kill anything, right? Even if you're winding back your attacks, especially when it comes to some enemies that regen their fatigue really fast, it's going to kind of suck. It's going to suck a little bit. But the benefit is, you always got them. You don't ever got to repair them. That's also a detriment because you don't ever have like a spell effect that you can apply to enemies readily with it. There's a little give and take. Hence, B rank. Anyway, up next we have light armor, which generally sucks. The big benefit of light armor, right, in particular light boots, which when you consider that, you could just, if you wanted the sneak bonus from wearing lighter equipment and you're interested in sneaking, just take off your shoes, right? Just take them off. People have done this since time immemorial, but even then, it's mostly irrelevant. Light armor, there is some very cool looking light armor, right? Which I think saves it. Its main saving grace is that there is cool light armor, but otherwise, like, what are you doing? If you're going to have armor that light, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm just not sold on it. I think it's C rank. I think light armor is C rank, especially if you're divorced from aesthetics. I mean, if you like the way if you want to rock the boiled netch leather, by all means, wear that shit. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, like we've said. But I wouldn't be wearing light armor unless you told me I had to, which maybe is a good enough reason. Like maybe I should consider at some point doing a character that only ever wears light armor. The one key point of note about light armor is that if you have Tribunal installed or you're playing Game of the Year Edition, which I think 99% of all people who play Morrowind today will have, it's going to be very easy for you to get a really good set of unenchanted light armor, right? When you get attacked by a particular assassin, that individual is going to be decked out in a full set of really good and really valuable light armor. If it's your first time through playing the game, that's going to be huge, right? You're going to have such a huge advantage that maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's worth keeping in mind. But at the end of the day, also, it doesn't really matter, right? It don't really matter. Your choice of armor, mostly irrelevant. Anyway, up next is Marksman. Speaking of early game experience, I generally think Marksman sucks but early on, because you just have so much extra stuff to contend with. And by default in the game, you don't have just the ability to willy-nilly do arrow enchanting, right? In the base game, this is often conflated. Correct me if I'm wrong. But enchanting arrows is not normally something that you can do in Morrowind. There is a specific plugin that adds in a whole bunch of enchanted arrows that you can buy, but you normally cannot do it. There are plenty of settings and mods, and does OpenMW come with it ticked on by default to where you can enchant arrows? I can't remember. Nonetheless, that's neither here nor there, because the big detriment early game is the fact that you have to carry around more arrows. It's not so tough to get a bunch of arrows, because if you go into any major town, you go into like a guard area, you're very liable to find like a gigantic barrel filled with 100, 250 iron arrows. That's no big deal. And in fact, you keep playing long enough, you're going to have like a repertoire of enchanted arrows that are pre-made by the game. You're going to run into those. The issue is early on when you're not as good with marksman and you're missing, it really sucks. Like, one of the more difficult things to accomplish in the game is if you want to go marksman and only use thrown weapons, because already throwing weapons like throwing stars, the shuriken, the throwing daggers and knives and stuff, those are already very hard to come by in the game, and they're fairly expensive, and you're not always going to get like returns on ammunition. You know, when you search a dead body, you're not always going to find like 100% of every arrow that you shot into them or whatever. You're not going to always get them back. It's kind of a pain in the butt to manage the arrows. Sneak attacks with ranged weapons are not as effective in Morrowind, but also I don't think it matters as much, right? Stuff is so easy to just wipe out and kill, even on max difficulty. On the flip side, it is very cool, the fact that there are 3 different, very distinct kinds of marksmen. You know, this is something that doesn't really exist in future games. And I guess, yeah, they bring it back for Dawnguard, right? For Skyrim's Dawnguard. They bring back crossbows. But it is very good and very cool, the fact that there's 3 very distinct and different feeling ranged weapons in Morrowind. You have bows and arrows, crossbows and bolts, and you get thrown weapons. And in that order, that's probably the order in which it is more from less to more difficult to just like single or use one type solely, right? Easiest to use a bow and arrow because they're everywhere. Like I said, you're liable to find just hundreds of arrows lying around inside barrels in towns. You join the Fighters Guild, you get a bunch easily that way. The real detriment is that it's just one extra thing for you to carry around and manage, which if you're a brand new player, it's your first time playing, maybe that kind of sucks, right? Maybe that's kind of bad for you. And doing like this stealth archer stuff isn't nearly as fun and as satisfying as it is in Oblivion or Skyrim. But you do get thrown weapons, which have some interesting scaling on thrown weapons, and you do get crossbows, which are very fun, and you know, they're kind of a big deal in Morrowind, with the fact that they don't exist to the same degree in Skyrim. Unless you get Anniversary Edition of Skyrim, then there's suddenly you have a big repertoire of crossbows available to you, but true enough, they don't exist in any form in Oblivion. I think Marksman, similar to Hand, it's a peculiar one. It's a fun, peculiar one. I enjoy Marksman. The big point of Marksman, though, that will maybe trip up a lot of new players is the fact that enchanting the bow itself or the crossbow itself doesn't work how you would think. You can put, I think by default, I mean the core game, unmodded, you can do on strike with the bow, but you wouldn't want to do that because the way in which you're thinking of on strike effects is how they work in Skyrim or Oblivion. In that, yeah, if I hit the enemy with my bow, they're going to take the enchanted damage that I have on this, or whatever debuff I have enchanted onto it. In Morrowind, that's not ever going to happen because technically you're never striking the enemy with the bow. It's the arrow that hits them. So when you enchant your bow and arrow, you need to have it set up to where it's applying a buff to you, right? To where it's like a cast when used, a sort of effect. And you use it that way. And in that situation, it does kind of suck. It does suck a little bit. But you can put a decent enchant on it that gives you like Chameleon or something along those lines, which is probably the go-to. You think that's the go-to pick for putting a custom enchant on a bow? Give it Chameleon? Maybe. Maybe you could do Sanctuary or Fortify Marksman for early on. It's a tough one. All right. Up next, the next stealth specialization skill we have is Mercantile. This is what's going to get you better or worse prices whenever you're spending money or getting money, right? If you're doing the barter menu and all of that, you have a better chance of haggling. It's another sort of skill that you're going to naturally level because, you know, may as well haggle a little bit even if you're bad at Mercantile. It's also going to increase the chances of you succeeding at bribery. Every time you bribe someone with, 10, 100, or 1,000 gold at a time, you're going to have higher chances of successes with lesser amounts of gold, and even higher chances of successes with greater amounts of gold. At the end of the day, though, it kind of sucks. I think Mercantile is mostly irrelevant because there is just so much money involved in Morrowind. Once you hit mid-game, you will start running into equipment that you'll see has greater value than any vendor in the entire game has money for, right? Except for arguably 2 of them. But even then, I don't think they tend to have that much money for some of these items. And even then, if you, right? Okay, think of it this way. If you do want to fuss about money in Morrowind, which you shouldn't because eventually you're just going to have more money than you ever need, you could interface with the 2 secret traders, Creeper and the Talking Mud Crab, the like Easter egg merchants who have the 2 highest amounts of money, and they trade at a 1-to-1 rate, right? So if you sell them an item that is worth 100 gold, for instance, they will always try to give you 100 gold back. They're untethered by Mercantile. It doesn't matter what your Mercantile is. They'll always try to give you the amount of gold that an item is worth, regardless of your Mercantile level. Which, in truth, is very powerful and is why I never use them anymore, right? If it's your first time playing, go for it, or shit, if you just want to, just go for it. It's single player, you know? Ain't nobody got telling you. Or if you just want to collect a bunch of money for no good reason, just go for it. Why not? But I don't know. I don't see the point of Mercantile so much because eventually you're going to be buying and selling items that are so valuable to where even if you tried to haggle one way or the other, when you're selling like such a high value item, it's still going to just be more money than the vendor even has, right? You're going to get into a position where it's like, oh, I'm trying to sell a glass chest piece, and this person only has 1,000 gold, and this is going to be worth thousands of gold. Thus, if I really want extra value out of this, I'm going to sell it and also barter back some other like soul gems that may be filled or whatever that the vendor has. This is why enchanters are really good to buy and sell with, because they buy most weapons and armor, and they have soul gems or other enchanted gear that you can barter for if you would like. But truth is, Mercantile as a skill, it sucks. It's irrelevant. It's like, it needlessly complicates the trade menu because it's, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't cause any interesting bits of gameplay, I feel. Mercantile doesn't really add or take away anything. Well, it takes away, I guess, the speed of trading, and it causes there to be a bit of an intimidation factor for new players. But without a perk system, I feel like Mercantile it just sucks, right? Who cares, right? Mercantile, who cares? D-ranker. Anyway, up next, we have Security. This is another very, like, banal skill. This is your lockpicking and trap disarming. It's one of those skills where you should probably get it or its equivalent in Magic, or make sure you got money to buy in, like, certain scrolls and equipment that let you open up locked items. Security, lockpicking, trap disarming as it exists in Morrowind is super rudimentary, where you just sort of take the lockpick and you jam it into the model of the treasure chest or the door, and you just kind of keep wiggling it until it works, right? You try and make sure you have fatigue, you have either a sufficiently high security level or a sufficiently high amount of lockpicks. There's no downside to, like, oh, if I fail to probe a trap on the first try, it's going to go off. There's no give or take in that way. It's kind of boring. It's a boring one to deal with. There's a lot of cool picks. I think oftentimes myself, it's easy to lose track. Speaking of myself here, from personal experiences, it's so easy to lose track of the encumbrance on lockpicks and probes because they're such physically small items. You end up collecting a bunch, and sometimes if you're not paying enough attention, it gets away from you, and you end up noticing, oh, I'm carrying like 50 units of weight in just lockpicks because every time I see a lockpick, I pick it up. It probably doubly the case if your first Elder Scrolls game was like Oblivion or Skyrim, wherein these things have zero encumbrance, right? You may as well. You see a lockpick, I should pick it up, right? Lockpick, pick up. Security in Morrowind is kind of boring, right? It's so mundane. It does what it says, and because of that, I think maybe it's a B ranker, right? It's boring. It's a boring one. It gets you through to the end of the world. It gets you through to the end of the day. Up next, we've got Shortblade. Shortblade is very peculiar as well. I do think I like Shortblade a lot, though. Right? I think Shortblade is cool because it affects the way in which you fight, right? When it comes to Spear, right, it's similar to Spear in that way. When it comes to Spear, you're encouraged to do kiting in melee, you know? Poke them, keep your speed up, and keep your encumbrance low. That way you move quicker, and you're just able to backpedal faster than the NPC can catch you, especially when you start staggering them and slowing them down and stuff like that. Makes it even more valuable to put stuff on your spear custom enchanted to slow them down if you wanted. But even then, it's a bit of a roundabout way when you could just put strength on your spear or like some type of damage just to kill them faster. You know, there's creative and cool ways to do that, but at the end of the day, it's kind of irrelevant because you just kill them quicker. That's cool with Spear, being able to kite them around. You actually do engage in melee combat a little bit different. Same way as with like Axe, you know, granted it's significantly more boring. But Shortblade is the inverse of Axe, where Axe has very low, usually like 1 or 2 minimal damage, but exceedingly high maximum damage. Shortblade has exceedingly low minimal damage and honestly, generally quite high minimal damage. And this means that Shortblade is the best tends to be the best melee choice in the game for just spamming attacks really quickly. if you're new to Morrowind and you're unfamiliar with how like the wind-up system works, and you still have the natural, frankly, natural instinct of seeing the like weapon tooltip cards, the item cards for, you know, like a kite and dagger, and you look at it and you're like, okay, this does like 1 to 7 damage on a thrust or whatever, and I have it set up to where I'm always thrusting with this weapon because I just selected always use best attack, so I know it's always going to do 1 to 7 damage. You would justifiably but incorrectly assume that every time you land a hit, it's 1 to 7 damage, but that's incorrect. In Morrowind, 1 damage on there would be if you tap your attack button or your trigger or whatever, your left mouse button, you tap it, you don't wind up the attack, every time you're going to deal 1 damage. To get the maximum amount, you wind it up, and you'll always get that maximum amount. Short blades get around this, or sort of not they don't get around it, but short blades work with this system in that you're kind of encouraged to just keep spamming attacks as fast as possible, which is good too, because short blades have a really high attack speed. They're perfect for just like spamming your attacks, never winding up any of them except maybe your starter attack. The great irony is that if you truly did want to try and go and do and specialize in like sneak attacking in Morrowind, which I don't recommend you do, which we'll get into very shortly, Shortblade actually sucks for sneak attacks, right? There's no perks in Morrowind, thus the damage you see on the weapon is the damage you're going to get, and then multiplied by whatever sort of damage multiplier you have through your strength. So ultimately, the best sneak weapon is like a two-handed battle axe, right? If you want to get the highest sneak damage, sneak attack crit, it's going to be a two-handed battle axe that you should be using instead. Regardless, for Shortblade, it is actually a very good weapon to use if you're a brand new player, I think. Because I think for most brand new players, your first instinct is going to be not to wind up your attacks, because there's no power attacks in the way that they exist in Oblivion or Skyrim. Your first instinct is just going to be, I'm going to try to attack as fast as possible. And short blades are good at that. They're also pretty plentiful. I like them a lot because of that, in the same way that I like spear, right? I think there's also a case to be made for axe, making you play in a cool and different way. The only issue is that I personally do not like charging attacks. In every game that I play, if there is a weapon, whether it be melee or even probably doubly so in a game where there's like guns or anything, or this is also why I tend to dislike bows and arrows in video games, is because you have to pull back your attack. You charge up an attack. I tend not to like charging stuff. The one exception, this is completely unrelated, but the one exception to that is the laser musket from Fallout 4. I actually really love doing that. And the reason for it is simply because charging the laser musket in Fallout 4 involves you rapidly spamming the reload key to like turn the crank and keep cranking up the laser musket to have more and more power. I love that. I hate the like kinematics, the physical interfacing that you do with your controls. I hate holding down the attack button to accomplish something. Instead, I love like spamming the shit out of reloading, right? I feel like holding down the attack button and then releasing and then something happens, that's so much less satisfying to me than just I click and something happens, you know? I love the charge up, charge effect on the laser musket. If more shit were like that, I would be so into it. God, they should put arbalists into Elder Scrolls 6. Could you imagine arbalists in Elder Scrolls? If you haven't played enough fantasy games or you just happen to know weapons. An arbalist is like that type of weapon where you crank it. It's kind of like a crossbow that you crank, and like it's got a big kind of like bicycle-esque crank on the back of it. They tend to deal a lot more damage in fantasy games in which they appear. Bless up to Pillars of Eternity. Arbalists. God, that would be amazing. I would so be into that. That would convert me to being a marksman freak in an Elder Scrolls game if we got arbalists. Because I really, really love the laser musket. It's so fun. I think the laser musket is one of the best weapons that they ever added to Fallout. Not even gonna lie. Anyway, neither here nor there. Back to Morrowind. We're talking about sneak. A skill which, it's awful. Sneak is probably the worst skill in all of Morrowind because it's so buggy, it barely works. Nobody really fully understands how it works. And frankly, the safest way to sneak is to just ignore it and instead use like a shitload of chameleon. There's a reason why every experienced Morrowind player is going to try to at some point make a beeline for the Shadow Weave amulet or the Shadow Mask amulet, the Amulet of Shadows up there by Nissus. It's because sneak is so busted. The problem with sneak is that so many different enemies are running sneak checks at the same time, and you yourself are running sneak checks. Everything is sneak checking at the same damn time, and even when it seems like you should be sneaking, if you're not sneaking in front of someone, you're never going to get the icon to appear. It's just such a fucked up. It's so busted. It's a miracle that they got sneak to work as good as it does in Oblivion and to actually take into account lighting, which it does kind of take into account in Morrowind, but you wouldn't know it based on how fucked up sneak is in Morrowind. Like, it's by far the most dog shit skill in all of Morrowind. I think, like, I don't think anyone would ever disagree. All right. Up next is Speechcraft, which, if you like playing a lot of role-playing games and you haven't played Morrowind before, at first glance, you might think, oh, Speechcraft, that's speech checks, right? That's cool. There are no speech checks in Morrowind. Speechcraft is used purely for, I think it affects starting disposition, and thus also affects, like, as you walk by an NPC, they're like, oh, Outlander, these clothes suit you well. Or you go by them and they're like, you smell like a fucking guar, you disgusting Enwa, right? It will minorly impact that. More so your fame and renown impacts that. Or your faction reactions, right? How high ranking you are in a faction, like the Fighters Guild, and you meet another Fighters Guild member, they're liable to like you. Whereas if you run into someone who's in the Mages Guild, maybe they like you less. Maybe people, okay, you know what, I won't say. you know, the Fighters Guild has some interesting connections. Nonetheless, Speechcraft is good for using the persuasion system. That's predominantly what it's for. Anytime you want to try to admire someone, which is the most common way of going about it, it increases the chances of you doing that by quite a bit. Same goes for intimidation and taunting. Taunting is maybe the saving grace for Speechcraft because taunting lets you fight and kill legally almost any NPC in the game that you can talk to. There are scant few who do not have a persuasion dialogue choice where you can open up the little persuasion game and taunt them. But through taunting, if you just see somebody who has cool armor, if you see like a guard and you're like, man, I could use that guard's armor, I have a whole bunch of scrolls that will really quickly kill them. If you're good at Speechcraft, you just keep taunting them and you will get them to just fight you. And once they enter combat with you and begin to attack you, it's totally legal for you to retaliate and no one's going to be like, yo, they taunted them. It makes it to where you can just kill any friendly NPC that you want. It does help a lot to also be able to admire them. in conjunction with taunting, because there's like this sweet spot around 40-50 disposition where if your disposition is too high, they're less likely to, I think you're less likely to succeed at taunting, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. There's almost like, it's almost like a bell curve where the chances where you're most likely to succeed at taunting is when you're around like 50 disposition, because if it's too low, their disposition is so low, odds are they're not going to buy it, right? It's going to fail. Same goes for if it's too high. I think there's also a chance. Same goes for like if you're admiring, there's this weird bell curve wherein you're not going to be able to admire them as easily if their disposition is already high, because it increases the difficulty of it. Similarly, if they already hate your guts, there's this, like I said, there's this sweet spot. It's good enough, Speechcraft, there's some fun nuance to it here and there. I think it's a B ranker. I think Speechcraft is B rank, right? All right. That does all those. The more mundane realm of things when it comes to combat, which, is more so like your strength related stuff, because also marksman and short blade and hand to hand and light armor are all combat related, and yet they're in stealth, right? And truth is, axes are probably better for doing stealth attacks, and yet they're in combat. Now, the one thing that does make sense, magic specialization. And you may have noticed we don't have anything up yet in S rank for any of these. That's because we've been saving them. Because as anyone who has played Morrowind will tell you, magic is fucking cool, dude. Magic rocks. God, magic is so cool in Morrowind. Even if you don't explicitly decide to be a spellcaster, you can still benefit from magic related skills, like, for instance, alchemy. Alchemy in Morrowind can get extremely ridiculously powerful through, once again, fortifying your intelligence. You can daisy chain fortify intelligence potions and just cook up some ridiculous stuff. Just go and look up, if you want to make really ridiculous broken potions, which everybody should do it at least once. Let's be real. Everyone should have that experience. If you really enjoy Morrowind, you should make a busted ass potion in daisy chain fortify int at least once. But after that, it does become so ridiculously game breaking. Like it's absurd. You can make strength potions that give you hundreds, thousands of strength if you want to go that wild with fortifying your int. You can accomplish so much by making these damn potions. It's ridiculous. It's so fun as well. I'm just in general, even leaving behind how busted alchemy can get in Morrowind. I just generally enjoy alchemy. Even the idea of just wardcraft, which exists in Morrowind, which we've been doing a wardcraft challenge in Morrowind Mondays Volume 2, which means a wardcraft is when you just eat ingredients raw. You actually get a small amount of alchemy XP in Morrowind whenever you eat a raw ingredient. Unlike future games like Skyrim, wherein if you eat an ingredient, it reveals like the first ingredient, or not the first ingredient. If you eat an alchemy ingredient, it reveals its first effect. And the higher your alchemy, the more you're going to find out by virtue of eating them, I think. No, I don't think so. I think it's just alchemy skill just increases the amount that you know, just straight up. And you can find out the starter one by eating it raw through wardcraft. In Morrowind, you never find it out, but you do get alchemy XP. And the higher your alchemy, the more you're just going to know more of the sort of spell effects present inside of a specific ingredient. If it has that many, if it has up to 4. Regardless, you can get alchemy points by just eating bread, eating different kinds of food. That's super fun. I've gotten up to like 90 something alchemy in our Morrowind Mondays Volume 2 by just eating food. I haven't crafted a single potion. I just eat food to do it. It's been so fun. Of course, making potions is super fun. Learning sort of like, oh, marshmallow and wickweed make a healing potion. Oh, I know where there's a whole bunch of marshmallow and wickweed on the eastern coastline of Vardenfell. There's loads of it growing in the grazelands and on the like watery areas. There, you could just get so much of it. Same goes for salt rice. It's so much fun. Alchemy is always going to be cool. Alchemy is an S ranker. It's so good. It's so easy to level up because it's so much fun to just make potions, right? The sound effects of potion crafting and picking up and sitting down a potion in Morrowind, I think it's just like a generic sound effect that they bought off of a like market that sells SFX, but it's like ingrained into my memory to where if I hear it anywhere else, I immediately think, oh, that's the Morrowind potion sound. Same goes for the sound effect of like the blight storms, the ash storms. This is once again, I believe, because I've heard it in other games and places, it's another like stock sound effect that they bought off of some marketplace. But every time I hear it, it's the Morrowind ash storm blowing in. That's what it is. Even if something else has predated it, I'm in too deep on Morrowind. Anyway, Alteration. Alteration is a very fun one. Let me refresh. It's the one with it's our purple, right? Our purple skills, or our purple magic effects, I should say. Yes. Alteration is really, really good too. Alteration is what gets us stuff like Feather, Burden, maybe less exciting. It lets us get the unique Morrowind spell effect, Levitate. You can open stuff. You get things like Slow Fall, which it's okay. Water breathing, water walking, they're okay. But where the real fun is, even more fun than Levitate, I think, is Jump. It looks very mundane, and very not self-explanatory, in that it's a spell that just says jump, and if you cast that spell, you won't jump, right? It makes you wonder, what is this doing? But what jump does is that it increases your own ability to jump. We talked about this with acrobatics. With jump, you can basically super jump across the entire game. It is so much fun. If you have ever played like a superhero MMORPG, like City of Heroes, City of Villains, Champions Online, any of that, and you've screwed around with super jumping and you've been like, man, I love super jumping. Or you've been like, oh, it's so cool how the Incredible Hulk, his fast travel is jumping. He just jumps really far. You can have that in Morrowind. Take some jump, get a little ring or something with 1 point of slow fall to where you can't even notice it, and that will 100% of the time break your fall. It prevents all fall damage completely, just 1 point of slow fall, which is also an alteration spell. And because of this, alteration is so cool. Alteration S rank, baby. All right. Up next is Conjuration, which admittedly is maybe not quite as cool. Let's see. Is there anything really cool in there? I think there's like Turn Undead. Let me get a bit of a refresher. Let's see. Yeah, you get like conjured equipment, or in Morrowind they're called like bound weapons, bound dagger, bound armor, bound summoned scamps and stuff like that. You get standard conjuration stuff. Yeah, Turn Undead does exist in Morrowind. But nobody really uses it. Oh, this is what's cool that's in... Yeah, this is what's cool that's in Morrowind. Okay. Yeah, what I think... It's okay. It is admittedly very useful early on to have Bound Dagger, right? If anything, Bound Dagger's existence and the fact that, like, if you have your conjuration high enough, you're going to just by default start the game with Bound Dagger. That kind of improves Shortblade a significant non-zero amount, I think. That's fun. Conjuring your own weapons, sometimes conjuring your armor, right? It becomes a bit of a pain in the ass, though. The benefit of it is that, you just have it on demand, maximum repair, maximum condition on it, on the weapon. The other major point is summoning like a little dude, right? That's fun. That's kind of fun in and of itself. That's already kind of exciting. You can have like effectively a companion. You can have several, right? That's enjoyable. Having like a cadre, a slew of combat pets, that can be fun. Some people really enjoy that aspect of like existing in a fantasy RPG, right? Being like the pet class. But what's really secretly fucking cool in Morrowind is this little spell effect called Command. Command is so amazing and so underrated. It blows my mind. It will blow your mind. If you have ever wanted any NPC to follow you and fight for you for any reason, get Conjuration, get Command. Command humanoid, command creature, start commanding stuff. Having it follow you. Oh, you want to have, let's say for instance, you go into Balmora and it just so happens someone lives in a really cool big house and they've died. You want that house, huh? Or there's a cool old man who never wears a shirt and maybe does some drugs. He says, oh, I'm leaving. You can chill out in my house now. You may as well just have it. But you're like, oh man, it's so far away. These houses I have, they're so far away from the Silt Strider. You can command the Silt Strider Caravaneer from the platform all the way to your house and still make use of their service from inside your own house. You can just have people follow you wherever the fuck you want. It's amazing. It's so wild. Command spells are ridiculous. They're incredible. I think maybe the only downside of the only sad and unexpected part of Conjuration in Morrowind is how it interfaces with Marksman. Because normally your saving grace with Marksman would be, oh, I'm going to conjure a bound bow. I'm going to use bound bow. The problem with bound bow in Morrowind, you only get the bow, jackass. You don't get any arrows. You have to supply your own damn arrows. It's kind of ridiculous. But alas, that's what it is. But I think Command single-handedly carries Conjuration to S rank because it's so cool. Command is so exceedingly cool. All right, up next, Destruction. I don't think there's actually anything that cool in Destruction. I'm not going to lie. I think Destruction might be one of the least interesting that there is. In other games, do you have like reason to be like, okay, for instance, in Oblivion, I'll apply weakness to Magicka, I'll apply weakness to an element of my choice, and I'll stack elemental damage and weaknesses on my weapon and all of that, and that is what's going to carry me through maximum difficulty. It's carried me through a lot. That's just not necessary in Morrowind. You do get interesting bits where you can damage an enemy's attribute. Unfortunately, this always counts as a hostile action, so it would be cool to be able to damage like a friendly NPC's personality and then trade with them, and thus you would have a good advantage in bartering, you know? But because it always counts as a hostile action, can't really do anything with it. Same with like damaging skills, draining these attributes. Just raw damage, it's fun, take it or leave it, but it's a little basic, it's a little boring, you know? I think that's kind of at the heart of a lot of the Destruction school. It's probably the least interesting magic school in the entire game. Yeah. I mean, unless you count like something like Unarmored, which I wouldn't actually count as like a school of magic. It's just here. It's, for whatever reason, it's here present. I would say Destruction is a B for boring. It's just not very interesting. My apologies to it. In a similar vein of alchemy, up next is enchanting, which is also ludicrously powerful. Probably not as ludicrously overpowered as alchemy, because there is an upper limit to what you can enchant on equipment, right? But you can futz around a bit with constant effect enchants having a range of like 1 to 36, right? So you just eke out 1 and then whatever the highest number you can put on. And every time you re-equip that constant effect item, it rolls 1 through 36. And on the time where you get a 36 or a 35, you just never unequip that item again. And it will always give you like plus 36 to Sanctuary, which is exceedingly powerful, right? This is how you end up with characters that have just passively loads of strength, loads of magicka. It is ridiculously good, ridiculously powerful. Enchant, it's a banger. It's so powerful that I don't even really make use of it anymore because it's just that strong. It's not as powerful as alchemy, but it is very powerful, right? Also, what's cool as well, when you use cast on use enchanted items in Morrowind, it actually gets you a small amount of enchanted XP. And if you overcap your enchant to, I think it's by default unmodded, 110 or is it 105? Something along those lines. It basically screws up irrecoverably. Well, it screws up for as long as you have 110 or whatever the number is. Enchant. It screws up the enchantment drain to where it never goes down. So if you have 110 enchant and you use like a sword that damages on strike, it will never actually lose charge, which is absurdly powerful because it's so easy to just eke out 10 extra points of fortify skill, fortify your enchant up 10 points. But alas, it's so powerful that I don't ever make use of it. Right? But similar to daisy chaining fortify end potions, I feel like everybody should do it at least once. I feel like everybody should do it at least once. It's a little powerful. It does break the game, but you should break the game at least once, in at least one of every way, one time. It's an easy game to break, and not in that way. All right. Not thanks to OpenMW. Let's see. We have up next Illusion. Illusion has taken such a massive hit with functionality in Oblivion and Skyrim. People will talk up, same way that people talk up stuff in the School of Destruction in Morrowind, right? Yeah, speaking of, while we're on the School of Destruction, this is how you out the Morrowind tourists from the real Morrowind lovers. If someone says that destruction magic is so cool, it's so cool how you can custom enchant a weapon to deal all these different damage types to like drain strength and deal fire damage and lightning damage and all this different combination of damage. You can have it to where you have a spell that damages people's armor, disintegrates their armor off of them. First of all, a lot of those exist in future games. Second of all, that's not that cool, right? Killing stuff in Morrowind, it's so easy, right? Sometimes I hear people will just sometimes make up schools of magic. I heard someone talking about like dealing sound damage. Sound is a spell, but it's an illusion spell. Thank you very much. It's a damn illusion spell. And what does it do? Well, it's a similar version of silence, but hang on, let me double check. Yeah, it is an illusion. Sound is like a similar effect to silence, except it's incremental. It reduces the chance of someone successfully casting a spell, whereas silence completely locks them out of it. I guess it's comparable to another illusion effect, invisibility and chameleon. Invisibility completely makes your character invisible. 100 It's basically like 100 something sneak, right? Or maybe it's literally 100 sneak. Whereas Chameleon is incremental and can overcap, which makes Chameleon super overpowered. And as per usual, as per is Elder Scrolls tradition, Chameleon exists here in the Illusion School. Sound and silence, at the end of the day, it's irrelevant, right? In practice, it's completely irrelevant. Sound and silence may as well not exist for the player. It's sound and silence are effects to be casted on you by enemies, because let's be real, what self-respecting Nerevarine is going to bother to cast sound or silence on an enemy when they could just fucking kill them, right? Combat is so easy. There is simply no need to worry about it. I don't know anyone who gives a damn about sound or silence at the end of the day. The game just isn't made for that type of gameplay. It's interesting that it's there, but it's at the end of the day, it's just irrelevant. Now, there are other cool things here. There is like frenzying stuff, demoralizing stuff. That's very useful. Paralysis is one that you can get a bunch of use out of. We mentioned the Jink Blades earlier, which also, right, we mentioned that with Longblade, but a lot of Jink Blades are also short blades too. They're short and long blades. If anything, I think short blades, I think there's more Jink Blades that are short swords or short blades than long blades, right? But hey, there we have it. They're both in A rank. Regardless, Illusion, it has a lot of what you would expect. Frenzy, Calm, Demoralize. You can blind enemies, which makes them unable to hit you, unable to see you. Silence and sound we talked about. Ones that let you see in the dark, like Light, Night Eye. Charm, of course, letting you bypass the Speechcraft persuasion system super easily. You can just cast a charm spell on someone. The old Oblivion favorite where you have a custom charm spell, 1 second of 100 charm, pop it on them, super easy to cast. Instantly, everybody loves you for 1 second, which thankfully, in conversation, time is paused. For sneaking, it's probably the best, most amazing thing ever. Chameleon, who needs a working sneak skill when you have Chameleon? Chameleon basically lets you circumnavigate the shitty, busted-ass sneak skill by just brute forcing your way through with oodles and oodles of Chameleon. Chameleon works on a 1-to-1 ratio as well. So if you have something that gives you 60 points of Chameleon, that's equivocal to 60 points of sneak. It's really, really powerful. And frankly, Chameleon is kind of decently easy to come by. Eventually, you'll find no shortage of potions or enchanted rings and stuff that give you like 20 points of Chameleon here and there, and you just stack them anytime you need them, and you're just completely undetectable, right? It's a saving grace for the stealth system in Morrowind, because sneak is so busted. Everybody just uses illusion pretty much. The secret hidden in illusion that real Morrowind lovers know, right? This is what they don't want you to know. It's Sanctuary. You may not, at a first glance, if you're new to Morrowind, you may read Sanctuary and think like, what the hell is that? What is this about? You might think it's some type of like Sanctuary as it functions in Dungeons and Dragons and Baldur's Gate 3. Some sort of like divine intervention effect that Paladin could cast on you. Sanctuary in Morrowind is another incremental spell effect. And it works on a 1-to-1 ratio. And what it does will blow your mind. It increases your own character's chance to avoid martial damage. So anytime someone comes at you with a sword, a hammer, they try and shoot at you with a bow and arrow, they try and punch you with their hands, it increases your chance of them missing you. Increases your dodge chance. So You know how much it sucks early on if you build, especially a really bad character and you don't know how to play. You're running around using like long blade when you only have 15 skill in long blade and you're missing like 85% of your attacks because you've got, well, even more if you've got 0 fatigue, honestly. You're missing almost every single attack you throw because you just don't know how to play. You can make the enemies be like that. Sanctuary is probably one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, spell effect for defense in the entire game. It's a big reason why you can just ignore armor at the end of the day, and even then you could still ignore it if you wanted to. But it's so powerful because every single point of Sanctuary that you have is like a 1% chance that the enemy cannot hit you. Your Sanctuary points are just at war with the enemy's own, long blade or hand-to-hand or whatever their martial weapon skill of choice is. Same goes for if they have a Fortify attack effect, which is rare on enemies. But regardless, you can become completely unhittable even if you're completely naked with 0 points and unarmored. It's ridiculously strong. It carries the entire school, but it doesn't even need it because, Chameleon also could have carried it, right? Between Sanctuary and Chameleon, there is just an absurd amount of utility present in Illusion. It's so good. It's an S ranker. I'm sorry, it's an S ranker. It's another spell school that is an S ranker. Will every single spell school except Destruction be S rank? I don't know. Let's delve into Mysticism. I forget what's in Mysticism. Mysticism may not be that good. It's got Soul Trap, but what does it actually have that I don't remember? Oh my god, it's got teleporting. Okay, it is. All right, I'm sorry, but Mysticism is also an S ranker. Mysticism lets you do Mark and Recall, which is exceedingly useful. And frankly, I use it in probably a less than ideal way. The best way to use Mark and Recall is every time you get a new quest that you want to do immediately, put down a mark in front of the quest giver. And once you go out to the location, accomplish the quest, get whatever item, kill whoever you need to kill, whatever, recall right it back in front of them. It will save you so much time in the long run doing it that way. What I always do with Mark and Recall is I use it like a Hearthstone from World of Warcraft. I always mark my home, and thus I go back to my house every time I recall. Honestly, it's not saving me that much time in the long run, but old habits die hard. Maybe in Morrowind Mondays Volume 3, I'll change my mind. But that's the best way to use it. Mysticism also gets you Elmsievi Intervention, Divine Intervention, cool like religious-related spells that will take you to a corresponding temple or imperial cult altar, if you will. It also has the absorb effects, which are less interesting, I think. Absorb, attribute, fatigue, magicka, different skills. I think those aren't that good. Detection spells are here. Detect animal I don't think is that good, but detect enchantment and detect key can be somewhat useful. The only problem with them is that it only shows up on your mini-map if you have it pinned. And if for some ungodly reason you're playing Morrowind on console, it's even worse because your mini-map is like really dog shit. And even then, if you're playing on PC, when those detect key and detect enchantment effects pop up, they're just little rings that show up on your mini-map, and you can't actually tell what they are by hovering over them. It just says like, it's here, there's something here, right? So it's not that good. This spell is situationally useful, but most people don't even mess around with it. Telekinesis is kind of fun in Morrowind because Morrowind doesn't have item physics and stuff. Physics really only applies to like characters, right? Actors in the world, and typically only you. I guess weapons, right? Marksman weapons have some amount of physics applied to them because they do pull down. Um, telekinesis, what it does is it just increases the length at which your reticle functions, right? So with telekinesis, you can pick up a piece of paper off of a table across the room. It will let you open a chest. This is the fun thing with telekinesis. If you're swearing off security, you can use telekinesis to open treasure chests and doors that have traps on them, activating the trap, which will fire off the trap, but you're nowhere near where the trap is going to go off. So you're totally fine. You'll just see like a little flash of the damage effect right by the chest or by the door, and you'll be completely unaffected. That's a super fun way to use that. Of course, Soul Trap, very necessary. But that's also similar to armor in that they feed us poison just to buy their medicine, right? Soul Trap is the medicine we must buy, that and the soul gems, for the poison that they have fed us, which is, I need to enchant stuff, I need to recharge my crap, which also no one really does. No one ever recharges their stuff in Morrowind manually, I feel. I've never done it. It's so much easier to just rest or wait days upon days because it'll recharge automatically than spend a soul gem manually recharging. But what can you do? And also on top of it, you can fail the recharge. But enchanting is just so good that that stuff doesn't matter. It powers through that. Spell absorption is also here in mysticism. That is, of course, very powerful. It's arguably the most powerful form of, what would you even call it? Defense against magic, right? It's either that or reflect, which I think applies to magic. There's no reflect melee damage, right? Yeah, reflect is only magic in Morrowind. So it's a toss-up between reflect and spell absorption, and I believe spell absorption is more efficacious than reflect when it comes to like doing custom enchants and all of that and custom spells. If you've only played Skyrim or Oblivion, you might think, well, what about resist magic or resist fire and stuff like that? The problem with resist magic as it exists in Morrowind is that it only applies to non-elemental magic. So if someone shoots a fireball at you that does 100 damage and you have resist magic 50, it won't work, right? It won't be like, oh, you have a 50% chance to resist all of that fireball. No. You only take half damage from that 100-point fireball. No. It would only work if they shot a absorb health ball at you. You would need specifically resist fire, because resistances in Morrowind are a lot more particular, and the defensive nature of resistances are not all encompassing. They're very specific. Thus, things that are more agnostic to those types of damage would be reflect or spell absorption, which you do find here in mysticism. Unfortunately, it doesn't really matter, right? Those bits of damage, they're kind of irrelevant, right? If anything, you know what? I think I'm talking myself down to making mysticism A rank. You know what? I think I've talked myself down. Mysticism is an A rank spell. We finally found one. Because everything is very nice, but it's not as mind-blowingly cool, right? Like, Mark and Recall is very good, but at the end of the day, who needs Mark and Recall when you can just fortify jump like hundreds of points and just jump in a single bound from Balmora to Caldera? Anyway, up next we have Restoration, which, that's S rank. If you look at Restoration and you think, why would he put that in S rank? That's just healing. It's so much, in Morrowind, it's so much more than just healing. Restoration encompasses probably the most powerful thing that you can do in Morrowind, which is fortifying, right? There's stuff like, resist, we were just talking on them. resist fire, resist magicka, resist normal weapons. You can restore your health, fortify your attack. Now there's something interesting. Fortifying your attack gets you it's a 1-to-1 rate of 1% of fortified attack is equal to 1% higher chance of you landing your attack with any weapon. I don't think you normally find it on spells. It's usually on like scrolls, maybe in a potion, or on like an enchanted piece of armor. I think it's super rare, if not impossible to find as a spell. I can't remember. I think it's just impossible. You never find it as a spell you can cast. But it is very powerful. But what is perhaps more powerful than that is Fortify Skill and Fortify Attribute. These are ones that are a little bit tough to get, but it's made significantly easier to get them with the expansions, Tribunal and Blood Moon. If you just get one ability that has like Fortify Strength, suddenly you have access to Fortify every attribute. Same goes for Fortify Skill. If you just get one spell that fortifies like athletics, then when you go into custom spell making or enchanting or whatever, it counts as you having Fortify Skill rather than Fortify Athletics. And it is through fortification that you can make some of the most ridiculous busted stuff. Every time we came upon one of these other skills where we mentioned like, oh, if you fortify it, it's so useful. That's Restoration doing its thing. Restoration is easily the most powerful spell school in the entire game. Even the stuff with alchemy that we mentioned that you're doing that's super busted and broken, that's technically restoration right there, right? You're fortifying your intelligence through alchemy, right? It's restoration magic at play, just via alchemy rather than via spellcasting or enchanting. It's so strong. It is easily the most busted thing in Morrowind. I think there's no question about it. It's so powerful. I tend not to make use of it, but once again, you should make use of it at least once if you've never done it, right? You should just break the damn game, fortify stuff up to no end. One of my favorite things to do, we mentioned that like enchanting, getting your enchant fortified to 110. One of the more hilarious things that you can do with fortify is you can fortify your strength so absurdly high that because the damage that you deal scales with strength, you can kill anything in the game with one hit if you just fortify your strength high enough. Now also, the damage that you deal with a weapon increases the amount of damage that not just the enemy takes, not just that their armor takes, or their shield if they block it, but it also increases the amount of condition damage your weapon takes. So you can deal so much damage with one single attack that it breaks your weapon in that one single attack, and you have to then immediately repair it. I guess in this way, maybe conjured weapons aren't too bad, right? But you'll have to just reconjure it. But it's ridiculous. It's super easy as well to get stuff like Fortify Strength to just deal more damage, because fortifying your strength is like the main effect of a shitload of alcohol in the game. More often than not, you will find alcohol that increases your strength by like 30 to 60 per jug, and it stacks. It's so absurd. Just carrying around like a jug of Sujamma, yeah, they're heavy, but it's gonna make you strong as fuck. And maybe your first instinct would be, oh, I'll use that to carry around heavy loot when I'm over encumbered. But maybe also consider using it in combat to just murder people, because you will do so much extra damage if you just like pop, as soon as you enter combat with someone, pop 5 jugs of Sujamma, right? It's so strong. It is so strong. And they're so easy to get, so much of the alcohol. There's fewer kinds of alcohol that exist in Morrowind that don't increase your strength. They exist, you know, like Shin or Cyrodiilic Brandy, stuff like that. But get yourself like a jug of Sujamma, Mazte, or Grief, or whatever. Flynn is super like low weight. It's only 1 unit of weight for a bottle of Flynn. Golly, you can wipe dudes out with that. It's so powerful. It's so busted. Anyway, finally, we have Unarmored, which is probably the worst as far as like contributions to your character's defenses, I'm pretty sure it's the worst one when it comes to light armor, medium armor, heavy armor. True enough, it does go by heavy, medium, and light, right? Heavy armor is definitely always the best. There's no perk system like it exists in Skyrim or Oblivion where, oh, if I get my light armor skill up high enough, then eventually my light armor is going to be on par with the defensive capabilities of heavy armor. Oh, if I get my heavy armor skill up high enough, then my heavy armor is going to weigh nothing, right? That doesn't really work in Morrowind. You have to rely on spell effects and enchants and all of that stuff. Unarmored, honestly, it kind of sucks, right? It honestly does suck a little bit. It is very cool that it exists, and it reads as if it would fully, like, it reads as if it's Sanctuary, which it isn't. It won't ever fully reduce or, like, remove incoming damage, I believe. The one benefit to Unarmored, though, is that you can... the one benefit to Unarmored is that the Restoration School of Magic exists. If you, like, buff your Unarmored, you fortify your Unarmored skill up to, I think it's 100, which is easy enough to accomplish. Suddenly, Unarmored, you have comparable amounts of, what do you call it, defenses, armor rating, as someone wearing a full set of Daedric gear, right? So it is a very good one to invest in if you have access to, like, those fortify skills, because then it does start to snowball in such a way. The only problem is if you're going around with no armor in certain slots, the way in which Morrowind's, like, equipment layering works, you kind of miss out on more equipment that you could be wearing and could be contributing to your character's stats, right? Because you can wear, for instance, a shirt, a robe, and, like, a chest plate. You know, you can wear those three things on that one body part. Or, for instance, there's no cloth item that exists for shoulder pads, for pauldrons. So you can never have enchanted cloth pauldrons because they don't exist. You would have to wear armor in those slots to get the benefit if you wanted an enchanted item there. It makes things a little wild, but it does look cool when you layer stuff. But Unarmored is a little finicky in that way, and you definitely do lose out on power. And at the end of the day, having the extra, like, armor rating, as we had mentioned, is kind of unimportant when you have stuff like Sanctuary, or just being able to physically stay away from the enemy, either because you're attacking from range or you're just super fast, stuff like that. You got them paralyzed, you're too sneaky. It's so easy to kill people if you're completely untethered when it comes to Morrowind's spell system and, like, magic effects. Yeah, and I think for that reason, it's cool that you can buff it up, but I think that's going to make it an A rank. Well, no, I think it's B rank, because it's so much worse that you lose out on, like, shoulder pads and all of that. It sucks. Using only unarmored is wild. I think you're more liable to have some pieces that are unarmored, because there are some pieces that are mutually exclusive. Like, you can't wear boots and shoes at the same time. You can't wear cloth gloves and gauntlets at the same time. But other stuff you can wear at the same time. Like I said, you can wear a chest plate at the same time as you're wearing a robe, you know? It's not mutually exclusive in that way. Anyway, that ought to do it for this one. Oh my gosh, we came in at just about 2 hours on my recording here. I don't know. It looks very funny here because it's clear that a lot of the stealth related ones suck, right? And then combat related skills are kind of like, they're kind of all right. They're kind of there. They're doing good. They're doing good work. And then magic is just absurdly powerful. And that's Morrowind. That's Morrowind for you. Magic is absurdly powerful. I think it does also help illustrate just how nice perks are in like Skyrim or even Oblivion, where it's the incremental perks where you don't even have like choice or whatever, but you just get them no matter what. A lot of people are quick to talk down Skyrim's perk system and say that like, well, it's irrelevant. There's so many perks that are just like increase your damage by whatever percent or whatever like that. But they don't know how things were, right? I think that's either disingenuous or uninformed, right? I think you haven't actually tasted the fucking rainbow, dude. Right? You weren't there. You didn't understand. You didn't get it. Right? Which isn't to say that this is bad. It's very fun. This is a very fun way in which Morrowind functions and works. But it would have been cool if there were, like, for instance, some mercantile perks, because otherwise mercantile kind of sucks butt. Right? Mercantile kind of sucks. Axe, not that important to have 10 extra points of maximum damage at the end of the day, because things don't even have that much health. And also surprise, I'm carrying 10 bottles of Flynn, so if I need to kill something that fast, I'm just going to drink booze and kill it that way, right? There's nothing really that cool to differentiate. Or for instance, even more so, cool perk, the fantasy of going around and being a sneaky assassin thief with daggers or a short blade, a short sword, using like thrown weapons. There is no sneak perk that gives you a sneak attack multiplier for attacking with a short blade, attacking with a dagger, attacking with a bow and arrow. There's nothing like that. So at the end of the day in Morrowind, the most valuable, the best weapon for doing a sneak attack, which already sneak attacking is stupid and busted because sneak is busted, is using a two-handed battle axe because that's the highest damage in the entire game. It's a little fucked up. It does illustrate some ways in which it would have been cool if there were perks in Morrowind, right? Which, don't get it twisted. Morrowind is still cool and you should play it, and you should break the game because you can get ridiculously overpowered in a few specific ways. All right, that'll do it for this one. Thanks so much for watching another one of these ridiculous ranking videos. Maybe we'll do some more, right? We're kind of really knocking them out. Maybe we should just do all ranking videos this month unless something really topical happens, because I do have a lot of requests for them. And like I'd said at the top, feel free to submit more requests for them, right? We'll do more ranking videos. Lord knows we could do this in like Oblivion and Skyrim. We could rank the damn skills there too, right? Oh my God. All right. Until next time, please take care of each other.